They didn't just trample my grandmother's last origami crane into the mud. That paper bird was my soul, man. They called the cops on me for trespassing in the only home she left me. But I didn't run. I took those 48 precious hours to flip the entire script. And the proof I found, literally in the garbage they dumped, it brought them to their knees. The way I made them pay double was way darker than their own betrayal. If you've ever dealt with family drama like this, hit subscribe. Drop a revenge in the comments if you believe justice has a price tag. The cruelty wasn't about the million-dollar numbers. Nah, it started the minute I got back from the airport. I was standing right there, staring at a brand new lock on my own door. The text from my Aunt Loretta was ice cold. 2 words, "Lock's changed, you're out." I always thought home was where people open the door for you. But for me, this was the first place they slammed it shut. I just stood there, staring at my whole life tossed onto the lawn. Clothes, photo albums, everything. Then I saw it. The paper crane Grandma Alice folded for me when I was 15. Those careful creases were ripped. The delicate paper body was soaked and pressed into the wet mud. It was a vicious message, a total slap in the face. They weren't just stealing the house, they were trying to erase my entire history. And my soul, too. But what I did next, they absolutely did not see it coming. I'm Emily Dawson, 29. I lost both my parents in a car accident when I was 6. They left a life insurance policy, handled by my Uncle Frank and Aunt Loretta. I grew up in their place in Portland, Oregon, with my cousin Kyle. But I always felt like a long-term guest, no voice. Uncle Frank always threw it in my face, "Don't forget who paid for your college tuition, kid." Aunt Loretta would chime in, "You think you'd survive without us?" I genuinely believed I owed them everything. I carried that burden for years. Then, everything shattered. A month ago, I found this old letter from my parents' estate lawyer. The crushing truth? My parents' $500,000 life insurance fund had fully covered my upbringing and education. I didn't owe them a single dime. The debt they used to control me for 20 years was just a terrifying lie. That realization changed everything. I mean, everything. So, one ordinary day, I was just checking work emails in my small apartment. My phone buzzed. It was Aunt Loretta again. "We changed the locks. You're out." My hands started shaking. I almost dropped my coffee. I typed back, trying to sound ice cold. "That's my house. You can't do this." But the lock was just the surface level damage. This betrayal dug deep. They lied about the money, and now they were stealing the only real home I had left, Grandma Alice's craftsman house. The one she specifically willed to me. I never thought her gift would ignite this nightmare. Where are you watching this from? If you've dealt with any family drama, drop a comment. Because what happened next? My own lawyer's jaw dropped. Portland has always been home. I used to think my family was normal. Not perfect, but fine. Uncle Frank ran an auto shop. Aunt Loretta worked admin for an insurance company. We lived in a suburban house with a white fence. We'd eat dinner together and sometimes camp at Silver Falls State Park. Kyle and I fought like siblings, but we always made up. But my true North Star was my grandma, Alice Dawson, a retired linguistics professor. She lived in her old craftsman house in the Belmont neighborhood. That place was pure max. Stacks of books, the smell of jasmine tea, and family memories. That house was my whole world. Holidays meant baking cookies in her kitchen, listening to her old stories. When I was 15, Aunt Loretta's control started suffocating me. I ran to Grandma Alice's. I sat curled up on her old armchair, folding paper cranes with her. "Each one is a wish for peace, Emily," she told me, her eyes shining. "Not everyone with the Dawson name deserves to keep this house. But you do. You'll build your own home." I had no idea those words would literally define my future. Sometimes her best friend from college, Helen, would drop by. They'd sip jasmine tea. Their laughter would mingle with the rustling leaves outside. One time as Helen left, Grandma hugged me tight and whispered, "Helen is the truest friend. If anything ever happens, you go find her." I just nodded. I didn't get it then. Grandma Alice passed away last year at 88. The hole she left is huge. A month later, the will reading at the lawyer's office totally blew up my life. Uncle Frank and Aunt Loretta were stunned. Grandma left the entire house, worth over $1.7 million, to me. It was all on a video testament, notarized and legit. Grandma was straight-faced, her voice clear. I chose Emily because she understands the value of this house. It's not just property, it's the family flame. Uncle Frank literally screamed, "She's senile. This is insane." Aunt Loretta squeezed her fist, face turning red, trying to hold back a storm. Kyle just looked down, avoiding my eyes. They had planned to sell the house, split the cash, or at least keep it with Uncle Frank. I tried to smooth things over. The next day, I invited them all to a coffee shop in Selwood. On my way, I bumped into Mr. Walter, the old-school retired plumber who's lived next door since the 70s. He stopped watering his hydrangeas to wave at me, his eyes sharp behind thick glasses. "Take all the time you need, Emily," he said, his voice warm. Alice always wanted that. I smiled, thanking him. I had no idea that the meticulously observant eyes of that old neighbor were secretly tracking every suspicious visit to Grandma's house. Over the smell of toasted bagels and the whir of the coffee grinder, I laid out my plan. I don't want to change anything. The house stays in the family. I just want to honor Grandma's wishes, host gatherings, keep the memories alive. I told them about Alice's Nook, the healing space on the ground floor for foster teens, complete with beanbag chairs and DIY bookshelves. My best friend Noelle texted me right after. "Watch your back, Em. Loretta hates losing control. That house is worth serious bank." I shrugged it off. They're family. They'll come around. They just need time. A few months later, I moved in. I started light renovations, keeping the old window frames, just updating the plumbing and wiring. I invited them over constantly, but Loretta always found something to criticize. "Grandma Alice kept this rug for 30 years, she said, trailing her fingers over the new one, passive-aggressive as hell. I just gave her a tight smile, trying to ignore it. But in my head, I kept wondering, are they really going to let me keep this house? Or is this just the beginning of a bigger nightmare? Have you ever found one secret that just flipped your entire past upside down? I did. I was a senior in college. I walked into the financial aid office to check my student loans. The advisor smiled. "You're lucky. Your parents' insurance fund covered every cent until graduation." I froze. A total punch to the gut. The money from the parents I lost when I was 6 had covered my entire life and education. Not Frank and Loretta's money. The debt they held over me for 2 decades, a horrifying manipulative lie. I raced home, my heart pounding in my ears. I found Loretta in the kitchen. "Why did you tell me you and Frank paid for college?" I asked, my voice shaking. She just waved her hand away, her eyes ice cold. "You think you would have survived without us?" I wanted to scream, but I just stood there, trapped in the shadow of this family, full of doubt and hurt. I didn't know how to get out, but the seed of suspicion was planted. Loretta slid her hand over the dining room's fresh paint, making a face. "These curtains don't match an antique house like this at all." Kyle, my cousin, tried to smooth things over after a tense Sunday dinner. "She's just stressed about things changing," he whispered, helping me clear dishes. Uncle Frank kept muttering that they needed to sell the house for their retirement. I understood their disappointment, but I wouldn't budge. Grandma Alice wanted the house to stay. I was honoring her legacy. The real trouble blew up when I announced the Alice's Nook plan, a healing space for teens in the foster care system, with beanbag chairs, DIY bookshelves, and weekend reading sessions. The huge living room of that Portland craftsman was perfect. It would honor her spirit and generate income to maintain the old house. 2 weeks ago, I shared the idea at a family dinner. Uncle Frank immediately lost it. "This is a residential neighborhood, Emily. You can't just run a public place like that." I took a deep breath, staying calm. I checked with the city. With limited hours and the right permit, an old house is exempt. Loretta shoved her plate aside, giving me the death stare. "You're going to ruin the whole neighborhood with strange kids coming in and out? Is that what you really want?" I sighed, trying to manage the pain from our last confrontation. "That's not it, Auntie. The Nook only hosts a few kids at a time, by appointment, like a small library." The tension was awful until Uncle Frank held up his hands, cutting us off. "Enough, it's Emily's house. If she wants to do something foolish, let her." I thought that was their acceptance, however grudging. Frank and Loretta left right after, and I felt a tiny spark of hope that things would settle down. Kyle stayed back, wiping the sink. He avoided my eyes. And in that moment, I realized something dark. The silence from the people you trust hurts more than any direct attack. He knew the truth, but he chose to sit out my fight. "They'll cool down, Em," he said, looking at the floor. "Just give them time." I wanted to believe him. But deep down, I worried, especially after finding out they lied about the insurance. I probably missed the look in his eyes when Uncle Frank declared, "Let her do something foolish. That was too easy of a surrender." I didn't know then that it wasn't acceptance. It was the final surrender. And I never suspected that Kyle, who was comforting me, was actually in on their plan. Later, when everything broke, I found his text to Loretta. "Mom, I think Emily will cave if we push her harder." He wasn't the mastermind, but that silent complicity, that was the final, twisting knife in my back. I flew to Seattle for a 3-day marketing conference. The presentation I'd prepped for months killed it, landing a huge new client. I was on a high. When the plane touched down in Portland, I texted Noelle, "So pumped to sleep in my own bed tonight." I took an Uber from the airport, dragging my suitcase up the Craftsman steps. I put the key in the lock, but it wouldn't turn. I thought the lock was jammed. The 100-year-old wood door can be finicky. But after a few frustrating tries, I knew something was seriously wrong. Then I saw it, a brand new, shiny deadbolt on the door. My heart started thudding in my chest. I grabbed my phone. Loretta didn't pick up. Frank went straight to voicemail. Then, my phone vibrated. A text from Loretta. "Locks changed. This house belongs to the family, not you." I stared at the screen, completely stunned. My hands shaking, I typed back, "Seriously? You think this is cool?" I tried to sound tough, but I was falling apart. Standing outside my house, the house Grandma Alice legally left me, my safe space for folding origami, I couldn't breathe. I called Kyle, voice shaking. "Do you know about this?" He stammered. "Know what, Em?" He sounded too innocent. "Frank and Loretta changed Grandma's locks. They locked me out of my own house." A long silence. Then he said, "Emily, I'm so sorry. I swear I didn't know they'd actually do it." I pressed him. "Where are they? I need to talk to them now." Kyle's voice was low. "They're gone to Olympic National Park for the weekend. Back Sunday." My head was spinning. Today was Friday. Where the hell was I going to go for 2 days? "Kyle, do you have a key? Can you please come open the door?" Another heavy silence. "I don't have one, Emily. And even if I did, I don't want to get stuck in the middle. They're seriously mad about your Nook plan." I was stunned. "This is my house, Kyle. It's legal. They can't lock me out." He rumbled, "Maybe you should just give them time. Stay at a friend's place." I hung up, sinking onto the steps. I felt totally betrayed, not just by Frank and Loretta, but by Kyle, too. The insurance money lie was pounding in my head. How many times have they lied to me? Then I saw them. Black trash bags piled up next to the bushes. My heart just stopped. What was in there? What do you do when your whole family turns on you? Let me know in the comments, because this story was just getting started. I stared at those black trash bags packed with my life. Was there anything colder than having your entire existence, your memories cleaned out, bagged up, and thrown away like garbage? I was already grieving Grandma Alice, who passed at 88. But the will reading in that Craftsman house was the real shocker. Frank and Loretta sat there, faces stone hard, as the lawyer played the video. Grandma was crystal clear. "I am of sound mind. I chose Emily not out of pity but trust. She understands the true value of this house." Frank jumped up screaming, "This is a mistake. She's senile." Loretta grabbed his arm, eyes spitting fire. Kyle looked down, avoiding the drama. Their hatred was a physical thing, like knives pointed at me. But I held my ground, determined to honor her will. Standing outside the house now, I finally got it. They didn't just want the house. They wanted to erase me from the family narrative. I ripped open the black bags next to the bushes. The first had clothes stuffed carelessly. The second, toiletries, my toothbrush, toothpaste, just rolling around. The third had photo frames, books, and the crushed origami crane. They bagged up my whole life and trashed it. I called Noelle, trying not to cry. They changed the locks and threw my stuff out. She practically screamed, "I'm coming now. Stay put." As soon as I hung up, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was Kyle, his voice frantic. "Emily, you gotta leave right now. Frank just called the police and reported a break-in. And also," he stammered, "I overheard them finalizing a $2.5 million deal. They're going to demolish the whole place in the next 48 hours. I snatched my phone and the ripped crane out of the trash bag. then belly crawled behind a dry lavender bush by the curb. Just then, a patrol car turned onto the street. Red and blue lights flashed softly. I held my breath, feeling the heat of the pavement under me. My heart was racing like a drum. The car drove slowly, agonizingly slow, and then finally passed. Not only was I homeless, but Grandma's house was about to be obliterated, and I'd almost been arrested as a criminal right on my own doorstep. Before I could even process it, Noelle's familiar headlights sliced through the darkness. She jumped out, her hair tied back hastily. "This is insane. They cannot do this," she yelled, helping me load the bags into her trunk. I mumbled, numb. "I know, but they did it anyway." At Noelle's tiny Selwood apartment, I checked my bags. Key documents were missing. Grandma Alice's carved wooden box, the one with the paper will, the heirloom jewelry, her diaries about the house. It wasn't there. My birth certificate and ID were gone too. This wasn't an accident. They took them on purpose. That night, on Noelle's pull-out couch, the springs digging into my back, I cried until I ran out of tears. The betrayal was like a fresh wound, sharp and deep. These were my aunt and uncle, the people who were supposed to protect me. Now they were treating me like an evicted tenant. They denied Grandma's will. They denied me. I wanted to smash the windows and storm back in, but I knew that would only make things worse. I had to be smarter. The next morning, Kyle called. "I talked to Frank and Loretta," he said, hesitant. "They aren't changing their minds. They said you're being selfish about the house." I practically screamed. "Selfish? This is my house, Kyle. Grandma left it to me." Kyle sighed. "They feel you disrespected the family by opening that Nook thing. Frank said if you just agreed to sell and split the money, none of this would be happening." I remembered Frank's furious eyes at the will reading. "So it's about the money. They're willing to throw me out on the street for cash?" Kyle replied, "It's not just the money, Emily. It's about respect. They feel you don't care what they want." "What about Grandma Alice's wishes? What about respecting her?" I challenged. Kyle dodged. "Look, I'm just trying to help. If you apologize and agree to talk about selling, maybe they'll let you back in." I gripped the phone tight. Apologize for what? For legally owning the house she left me? For keeping my promise to her? Kyle just muttered, "You're making things harder." I hung up, yelling, "I just want to understand why my family would do this." Noelle hugged me. "You need a lawyer, Emily, now." That weekend was the worst time of my life. I felt abandoned, lost, terrified of the future. The days blurred into a swamp of helplessness on Noelle's tiny couch. But then the memory of Grandma, the scent of jasmine tea in her old kitchen, and those paper cranes, they urged me to be strong. Under the pain, a fire of pure rage was ignited. They had no right to steal what was mine. They had no right to throw me away like garbage. I wasn't going to let them win. Monday morning, I called out sick. In a quiet cafe, the coffee couldn't cut through the bitter taste in my mouth as I frantically searched my laptop for property dispute lawyers. By noon, I snagged an appointment with Maya Lin, a high-powered attorney known for being a total shark. Maya's office was downtown Portland, in an old red brick building. The soft light from her desk lamp eased some of the tension. I poured out my whole story. Grandma Alice's will, my hopeful plan for Alice's Nook, the shock of the changed locks, my stuff tossed on the curb, and the missing wooden box. Maya listened intently, her long fingers flying across her notepad. She'd occasionally stop to ask a surgical question. When I finished, she leaned forward, her eyes focused and her voice dead serious. "Let me be crystal clear. Your aunt and uncle's move is blatantly illegal. This is a clear case of wrongful eviction, even if they were the homeowners, which they are not. You have the deed and the will, correct?" My heart sank. "The original will and all my IDs were in that wooden box," I admitted, my voice dropping in shame and panic. "Right now, I can't even legally prove who I am in court." Maya didn't flinch. Instead, a cold fire flashed in her eyes. She clearly explained the legal plays we could make. A wrongful eviction claim and a quiet title action to officially confirm my ownership. Legally, we have the copy of the will and the notarized video. That's a massive advantage. But the real challenge, she warned, her voice dropping, isn't the cold, hard law. It's the human element. Will a judge really kick out an elderly couple, who the media will call your caring guardians, when they start crying on the evening news telling a totally different story? Sometimes, Justice in the courtroom depends on who sells the better narrative. Her warning hit me like a physical blow. This fight wasn't just in the courtroom. It was already out there, in the press and public opinion. Have you ever been betrayed by your own family? Have you ever had your entire community turn on you because of one online post? Before this turned into a full-blown legal disaster, I did try to keep the peace. I invited Frank, Loretta, and Kyle to dinner at the Craftsman House, hoping to mend the crack. In the kitchen, the scent of jasmine tea and baked bread was supposed to be comforting. I shared my vision for Alice's Nook, the healing space for foster care teens and kids dealing with depression, open every Sunday to honor Grandma Alice. Loretta snickered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Turning the ancestral home into a charity center? She added, if you do that, don't expect us to stay quiet. Frank nodded, his eyes cold. Kyle just looked down, silent. I swallowed the hurt, hoping they'd somehow come around. But deep down, I felt the storm coming. In Maya Lynn's red brick office, I sat across from her, gripping a glass of water. I have the copy of the will the lawyer sent after the reading, I said, my voice shaky. Maya nodded. Good, we'll subpoena the original from the probate court. The house deed? I swallowed hard. Copy also, registered with the county. She typed fast. All right, we can get the records easily. Here's the plan. File an emergency motion to restore your possession immediately. Then we sue for wrongful eviction and personal property loss. Sue sounded so heavy. I whispered, I just want my house back. Maya softened her tone. I understand, Emily. They are your family, but they chose an illegal path instead of negotiation. We have to protect your rights. I nodded, my heart hammering as I signed the stacks of papers. Maya promised to file that afternoon. Document everything, she instructed. Texts, emails from your aunt or Kyle, all your expenses, missing items, and do not contact them directly if you can help it. Everything goes through me now. I left her office, and my phone blew up. It was a notification from the Belmont Neighbors Facebook group. Loretta had definitely taken inspiration from that tense dinner. She posted, tagging me, heartbreaking betrayal by my own niece, turning dear Alice's cherished family home into a public space despite our pleas. Some people forget where they come from. The comment section was brutal. Dozens of people, friends, family, strangers, called me selfish, spoiled, and ungrateful. Loretta was painting me as the villain, and everyone was buying it. I showed Noelle the post that night. Public smear campaign? She fumed. They're trying to use social media to force you to quit. That night, I got the first voicemail from Uncle Frank. His voice was cold, nothing like the uncle who used to take me camping. You made a big mistake bringing lawyers into this, Emily. Loretta is devastated. If you think the family is going to stand by while you destroy Alice's legacy, you are dead wrong. The messages got worse. By the third one, he was threatening to sue me, claiming I manipulated a senile Alice into writing the will. A complete lie. But fighting that kind of accusation would cost a fortune. The rest of the family started taking sides. My Aunt Margaret called me greedy. 2 cousins blocked me on Instagram. Only Helen, Grandma's best friend, texted, Alice chose you because she trusted you, Emily. Don't let them bully you. A few days later, Kyle texted. He wanted to meet at a small coffee shop in Selwood. He sat there, looking exhausted, stirring his black coffee. They're selling the house to a real estate company, he blurted out. They've been talking for months, way before you even mentioned Alice's Nook. The company wants to demolish the house and build luxury condos. I felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. Demolish Grandma Alice's house, the one with all the memories? Kyle nodded, looking down. The land is worth more than the house. They were offered $2.5 million. When were they going to tell me, Kyle? This is my house. He sighed, looking totally beaten. They thought if they pushed you hard enough, you'd quit. The company wants to close fast. I remembered Aunt Loretta's sarcasm at dinner. They'd been planning this for ages. I gripped my coffee cup. My hands were shaking. They weren't just stealing the house, they were trying to erase Grandma's will. But I was going to fight back. What do you do when your own family becomes the enemy? Have you ever realized your own family would sell you out for cash? I got back from my Seattle trip, hauling my suitcase up to the Portland Craftsman, relieved to finally sleep in my own bed. But the key didn't work. A shiny, brand new lock stared me down. I tried again, hands shaking, no luck. Next to the bushes, black trash bags were piled up and soaking wet. My clothes, my books, and Grandma Alice's origami crane were stuffed inside. My phone buzzed. A text from Loretta. "This house is a family legacy. It doesn't belong to a girl like you." I called Kyle hoping for an explanation, but got a cold shoulder. I don't want to get stuck in the crossfire. The sky opened up. Rain was pouring down. I curled up on the porch steps, hot tears mixed with the cold rainwater. The shame from the insurance lie came flooding back. It felt like a gut punch. I spent my whole life paying a debt I never owed. Now the only house that was legally mine? Out of reach. Noelle showed up, pulled me into her car, her voice hot with fury. "They're not just heartless, Em. They broke the law. You need a lawyer, like yesterday." She drove me to her little apartment in Selwood. That's where the fight for justice started. When Kyle spilled the beans about Frank and Loretta planning to sell to developers, everything snapped into place. The rush, the dirty tricks, the online smear campaign, it wasn't about tradition or the Nook. It was just about the cash. The corporation wanted to close the deal fast. If they didn't, they'd move to another lot. They had planned this for months. I was nothing but an obstacle they needed to remove. The financial pressure was crushing me. Lawyer fees were eating up my savings. I had to buy essentials because my stuff was locked inside. I chipped in for Noelle's rent and groceries, watching my bank account drain. My job was suffering, too. My boss was cool about the family drama, but I was missing deadlines, spaced out in meetings, and couldn't focus. That big Seattle client started complaining about the drafts. I was terrified of losing the contract. Noelle was a rock, but sharing her tiny one-bedroom apartment started getting tense. Her boyfriend, Ethan, was clearly annoyed I was always around. "You can stay as long as you need to," Noelle insisted. "Ethan gets it." But I saw the fatigue in her eyes. I had to fix this. Maya Lynn called with an update. "The emergency hearing is set for Monday. The judge is fair and follows the law, so we have the upper hand, but we have to be prepared." I asked, "Have my aunt and uncle responded yet?" Maya sighed. "They hired Daniel Voss, a specialist in family property disputes. He's going to paint you as a manipulator, claiming you forced Alice to change the will." I was shocked. "That's insane. I would never do that." Maya said, "I know, Emily, but brace yourself. This is going to get messy." That night, on Noelle's lumpy sofa bed, I couldn't sleep. The springs were digging into my back. The people who raised me were now lying and destroying my reputation, all for money. The betrayal cut deep. But the memory of Grandma Alice, the crane, the jasmine tea, ignited a protective fury inside me. I wasn't going to let them erase her will. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in a navy dress and low heels, my hair pulled back. Maya told me, "Look respectful, look sympathetic. The judge is still human." Outside the Portland courthouse, we were running through our strategy when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. "Miss Emily Dawson?" A male voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "Officer Carter, Portland Police Bureau. You need to come to the station to answer questions about stolen property." My blood ran cold. "Stolen property? What are you talking about?" "A complaint was filed claiming you stole valuables from your aunt and uncle's house, including heirloom jewelry and documents." I panicked. I looked at Maya. She snatched the phone. "This is Maya Lynn, Ms. Dawson's attorney. What are the charges?" I listened to Maya's end. It was exactly what I thought. Frank and Loretta were accusing me of stealing Grandma Alice's wooden box, the one with the will, jewelry, diaries, and my birth documents. The things they took. Maya went straight up gangster. "My client will not be coming to the precinct today because she is in court for a hearing. Those items are her legal property. We will address these false claims later." She hung up, her face grim. "They're playing dirty, Emily. How far would they go to steal my house? What would you do if your family tried to frame you? Drop a comment. This battle is about to explode." Can you imagine being framed by your own family right before your day in court? Officer Carter accused me of stealing Grandma Alice's box, but Maya shut it down fast. "They want to paint you as a thief to ruin your credibility," Maya said, squeezing my hand. "Focus on the hearing, one step at a time." Inside the Portland courtroom, I faced Frank and Loretta for the first time since the lockout. Loretta kept her head down, lips tightly pressed, avoiding my eyes. Frank was glaring, his face scarlet like he wanted to devour me whole. Kyle sat behind them, looking miserable, glued to the floor. Maya presented the will, the deed, and the evidence of the illegal lockout. Their lawyer, Daniel Voss, a sharp guy with ice in his eyes, argued that I had abandoned the house and that my aunt and uncle were just protecting it. Miss Dawson intended to turn this historic home into a public facility, going against Alice's true wishes, he claimed. Her aunt and uncle, the prior beneficiaries, were simply upholding family tradition. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, didn't flinch. The will is crystal clear, Mr. Voss. Miss Dawson is the rightful owner. Whether her renovation honors Miss Alice or not is not a legal matter. She looked directly at my aunt and uncle. Mr. and Mrs. Dawson, you have legal channels to contest a will. Changing the locks and taking the owner's property is not one of them. Loretta started crying. Frank's face darkened. The judge continued. I am granting the emergency injunction. Dawson is to be given immediate access to the home. All personal property must be returned within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in consequences. I should have felt elated, but I felt empty. Leaving the courtroom, I heard Frank whisper to Loretta, "It's not over." In the hallway, as Maya was discussing the next steps, an officer approached. Miss Emily Dawson? My stomach twisted. I need to ask you about the stolen property, per the complaint filed by Mr. and Mrs. Dawson. Even with Maya's legal shield, I was humiliated, forced to answer questions right there in the courthouse lobby. Several colleagues saw the whole thing. Their curious looks like daggers. The next day, Loretta's smear campaign escalated. Beyond the initial Facebook posts calling me a family legacy destroyer, she released a deepfake video, splicing clips from that tense dinner to make me look like a screaming, ungrateful, greedy niece. She even sent anonymous emails to my company, spreading rumors through local parent groups. My boss called me in, his voice grim. That major Seattle client requested we suspend work immediately. They cited concerns over your public image affecting the company. I tried to explain, but his eyes were full of doubt. Everything was crumbling. In the middle of this despair, Helen, Grandma Alice's longtime neighbor, texted, I know what Alice wanted. Don't give up, Emily. Her words were a beacon in the pitch black. That afternoon, with a locksmith and a police escort, Maya's precautionary measure, I stepped back into the Craftsman house. The sight took my breath away. The house hadn't been demolished, but it was hollowed out. Grandma Alice's antique wooden desk, where we folded cranes, had its drawers pulled out and was empty. The living room walls were bare, where her favorite framed photos used to hang. The wooden box containing the will, the jewelry, the diaries, still missing. They had stripped the house of everything valuable, leaving behind just an empty shell. I collapsed onto the sofa. The ghost of Grandma's jasmine tea seemed to linger, but only the pain was real. What was this legal victory worth if my house was stolen from the inside? What do you do when you win the battle, but lose everything? Hit me up in the comments. This story is far from over. Have you ever felt the whole world turn against you, where even your own house feels like an enemy? Stepping back into the empty Craftsman in Portland, I faced Frank and Loretta's ultimate cruelty. They didn't just lock me out. They looted every valuable thing. Grandma Alice's furniture, photos, and the wooden box with the will, diaries, and jewelry. Document everything. Maya Lynn's voice echoed in my head as I recorded every bare spot. This is contempt of a court order. The escorting officer looked awkward. You should file a separate theft report. The irony was insane. They accused me of theft, and they were the ones who ransacked my home. That night, alone in the cold, empty house, I lay on a bare mattress. They took the pillows and blankets and let the despair wash over me. Frank and Loretta weren't just betraying me. They were trying to annihilate me. Legally, financially, reputationally, and spiritually. They were willing to sacrifice family, sacrifice Alice's dying wish, all for the money. I cried until my throat was raw, never feeling so utterly alone. The people who were supposed to love me most had abandoned me. In the dark, I seriously considered giving up. Maybe I should just let them have the house. Was it worth losing my family, my reputation, and my peace for this? Was I being selfish, as they claimed? I reached for my phone, ready to call Maya and drop the suit. Then an email popped up from an unfamiliar address. Subject line, Miss Alice, urgent information. Emily, I was Miss Alice's nurse in her final months. There is something you need to know about your aunt and uncle's conduct. before she passed. Call me if you wish to talk. The email was signed Clara Hayes, with a phone number. The timing was too perfect. Was this another one of my aunt and uncle's schemes? A fake nurse with fabricated evidence? I was about to delete it when my phone rang. Unknown number, Oregon area code, where Helen, Grandma's best friend, lived. Emily, it's Helen, her warm voice said. Did you just send me an email about being a nurse? I was confused. She chuckled softly. No, my dear, I'm no nurse, but I have something Alice entrusted to me. She didn't want your aunt and uncle getting their hands on it. It was almost midnight, but the first spark of hope in weeks ignited. The next morning, I called out sick and drove 2 hours to Helen's house outside Portland. I hadn't seen her since I was little. Her small home was hidden among flower gardens. Though she was in her 80s, she stood tall, her eyes sharp. You look like Alice, she said, watching me. She was just as determined when something important was at stake. Over thin porcelain cups of jasmine tea, Helen told her story. Alice knew Frank and Loretta would contest the will. They had been pressing her to sell the house ever since land prices in Portland spiked. I was stunned. She never told me any of this. Helen frowned. Alice was protecting you. Near the end, Frank even tried to have her declared legally incompetent to take control of her finances. They arranged for a psychiatrist to evaluate her. The teacup rattled in my hand. They tried to have her declared mentally unfit? Helen nodded. Alice was furious. That's why she left everything to you, instead of the 50-50 split she originally planned. She stood up, walked to an old wooden table, opened a secret compartment, and retrieved a thick envelope. Alice asked me to hold this, she said, handing it to me. I drove back, my mind racing, and immediately called Noelle. With her trademark optimistic smile and dark humor, she said, "You can't let them win this easily." Her words were the wake-up call I needed. I immediately contacted Maya Lynn. After hearing everything, Maya confirmed. They illegally evicted you, stole your property, filed false police reports, and attacked your reputation. We are filing a countersuit. She prepared an emergency motion, demanding Frank and Loretta return all property, pay $45,000 in damages for emotional and material distress, and enforced a restraining order preventing them from coming within 150 feet of the house. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of hope, though the fight ahead was just beginning. What was inside that envelope, and was it enough to flip the script? Have you ever found hope in your darkest moment? Drop a comment, because this story is about to take a massive turn. Have you ever held the proof that unravels an entire conspiracy? Before I could even bring the envelope from Helen to Maya Lynn, I got a text from Mr. Walter, a retired teacher and Grandma Alice's longtime neighbor. "Emily, I have something Alice left for you," he wrote. At his house, the smell of coffee wafted through the small kitchen. He handed me a USB drive and a thin envelope. "Alice recorded this video will with her lawyer and doctor present," he said. In the video, Grandma Alice sat upright, her gaze firm. "I am not confused. I know Frank will be angry, but I choose Emily because she is the one who keeps the family flame burning." Mr. Walter gave me another envelope. "Alice was always anxious," he explained. "So she asked me, an old neighbor no one pays attention to keep everything safe. Every time Frank or Loretta visited her with a strange attitude, or when I saw strangers coming to view the house without Emily, I would write it down or take pictures in secret. I know it was a little weird, but now you see, Alice's instinct was right." Inside the envelope were clear photos of Aunt Loretta shaking hands with a real estate broker, right on the porch, along with a string of frantic texts Kyle had sent him, lamenting, "Mom has gone too far. I can't stop them." Finally, he gave me a handwritten letter from Grandma Alice, penned on jasmine tea-scented stationery, her handwriting shaky. "You are the keeper of the family flame. Don't let them extinguish it." I hugged him, silent tears streaming down. When Helen gave me the thick envelope, she said, "Alice wanted you to keep these, just in case something happened." Inside was a handwritten letter explaining her decision to leave me the Portland craftsman, along with emails exchanged between Frank, Loretta, and the real estate company dating back 3 years. I pushed the suspicious Clara Hayes email aside, assuming it was a trick from my aunt and uncle, and focused on the undeniable evidence from Helen and Mr. Walter. I brought everything to Maya's office. She examined it carefully, her eyes lighting up. "This is the knockout punch," she declared, holding up the video will USB. "The video proves Alice was of sound mind, certified by a lawyer and a doctor. The photos and texts show the conspiracy was planned and ongoing. They have no place left to hide." Maya quickly typed on her laptop. "Counterattack. I'm filing for a permanent restraining order, adding charges of harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress." That afternoon, she received an email from the lawyer Daniel Voss, titled, "We have an issue." The content proposed an urgent meeting to negotiate a settlement. "These new developments have changed our client's perspective." The email wrote. Maya gave a thin smile. "They know we have something, but they don't know what." 2 days later, in Maya's conference room, I faced Frank, Loretta, and Kyle. Aunt Loretta looked exhausted, her makeup failing to hide the dark circles. Uncle Frank, usually so imposing, was slightly hunched, his eyes avoiding mine. Kyle kept his head bowed, unable to look at me. Voss maintained his cold demeanor. "My clients are prepared to return all items taken from the house, acknowledge Miss Dawson's ownership, in exchange for her dropping all charges and waiving criminal prosecution." Maya leaned in, her voice firm. "Not enough. Miss Dawson has suffered severe damage, financial, emotional, and reputational. She lost income, incurred costs, and was publicly slandered within her family and her professional life." Voss frowned, visibly uncomfortable. Maya continued. "To ensure everyone understands the facts, let's review the evidence." She played the video will from Mr. Walter. Loretta covered her mouth, and Frank turned pale as they heard Grandma Alice. "I choose Emily, to keep the family flame burning." Maya paused the video. Miss Alice was clear in her intentions, certified by a lawyer and a doctor. "We also have photos of Mrs. Dawson meeting with the broker, texts from Kyle admitting wrongdoing, and real estate contact emails dating back before Miss Alice passed." Voss requested a brief recess. When they returned, the atmosphere had shifted completely. My aunt and uncle avoided looking at me, their eyes glued to the table. Voss's tone softened. "My clients will retract all false statements about Miss Dawson, return all property, and compensate for all damages, both temporary and emotional." The negotiation was lengthy, ending in a victorious settlement. Frank and Loretta had to issue a public apology, return everything: the wooden box, the photos, Alice's desk, pay all my legal fees, pay $45,000 in damages, and were legally barred from coming within 150 feet of the house unless invited by me. As I signed the agreement, I remembered those hours folding cranes with Grandma, the scent of jasmine tea wafting through the kitchen. She fought for me, and now I fought for her. The evidence had flipped the script, but could I ever mend my broken heart? Have you ever found the evidence that brought you justice against your own family? Drop a comment, because this journey isn't over yet. Have you ever had to face a relative's apology when the wound was too deep to forgive? Armed with Mr. Walter's evidence, Maya and I walked into the courtroom in Portland. Grandma Alice's video will, witnessed by a lawyer and doctor, played for the judge. She said, her eyes steady, "I am not confused. I know Frank will be angry. But I choose Emily, because she is the one who keeps the family flame burning." The judge reviewed the photos of Loretta meeting the broker, Kyle's texts, "Mom has gone too far," and Alice's handwritten letter on the jasmine tea paper. "You are the keeper of the flame," she declared. "Miss Dawson is the sole legal owner of the Craftsman House. Mr. and Mrs. Dawson must return all property within 72 hours, pay $45,000 in material and emotional damages, and are prohibited from coming within 150 feet of the house." All their defamatory social media posts were recorded in the civil record. I breathed a sigh of relief, but my heart was still heavy. After the session, Kyle approached, hesitant. "Emily, I'm sorry," he said, his voice husky. "Kyle, you were like a sibling to me," I replied, my heart aching. "You stood by and watched them destroy me." He bowed his head, his eyes red. "I was caught in the crossfire." "You chose a side," I said, gathering my documents. "I'm not ready to talk. Maybe someday." Kyle froze, but I couldn't comfort him. The betrayal still stung. Outside the parking lot, Maya placed a hand on my shoulder. "This outcome is good, Emily, far better than many similar cases. But reconciliation after something like this is rare. Are you okay with that?" I thought about everything my aunt and uncle had done: slander, theft, false accusations. I think I'm learning to accept who they are, I said slowly. And that's the most valuable thing I got from this nightmare. The official meeting took place in a sterile conference room in downtown Portland. Frank and Loretta sat opposite me, looking smaller than they did in my memory. Loretta's red-painted fingernails tapped nervously on the table. Frank stared into the distance, his jaw tight. Maya had warned me, stay calm, stay focused. This is about protecting your future, not about emotion. The two lawyers reviewed the terms. My aunt and uncle had to return all property within 48 hours, send retraction letters to my company and the community, pay my legal fees, pay $45,000 in damages, and stay at least 150 feet away from the house unless invited by me. This is excessive, Frank muttered. Voss, their lawyer, touched his arm, whispering, Frank, we discussed this. When it came time to sign, Loretta's hand trembled. She looked up, her eyes searching mine, her voice small. Emily, we're still family. Was all this really necessary? I looked her straight in the eye, my voice even. You accused me of theft, tried to sabotage my career, and stole Grandma Alice's belongings, the things she wanted me to keep. Yes, it was absolutely necessary. Frank flushed red, growling, You are as stubborn as Alice. This house tore the family apart. No, I countered. Your actions did that. The house was just the excuse. After the signing, Kyle approached me outside in the hallway. The video will had clearly changed him. I should have protected you, he said, his voice choking. I was a coward. I couldn't forgive him yet, but I saw the sincerity. Yes, you should have, but you admitted your mistake. That's a start. He hesitated. Can we talk? Coffee next week? I nodded slightly. I'll text you. I finally reclaimed my space. Noelle and two other friends came over, bringing infectious optimism. We burned sage, threw open the windows, and scrubbed away the residue of betrayal. That evening, on the front porch, pizza and wine covered the table. Noelle raised her glass. To Emily, who reclaimed not just the house, but her power. Laughter filled the air, creating new memories in the house that had been stripped of its soul. The property return was supervised by Maya. 2 trucks brought back boxes and furniture. I checked the inventory. Grandma Alice's wooden desk, the photo frames, the blankets and pillows, but the wooden box and the diaries she wrote about the house were missing. Aunt Loretta, present with Maya's permission, said, The wooden box is in the bank vault. The diaries. I might have thrown them out when I was angry. Losing the diaries felt like losing another piece of Grandma Alice. I stood in the living room, reminding myself, they can take the keepsakes, but they can't take away their meaning. As everyone left, I sat in the living room, the space I planned to turn into Alice's nook, the community space she envisioned. Boxes were everywhere, but my heart felt strangely empty. The scent of jasmine tea seemed to linger, a reminder of the days we folded cranes together. What was this victory worth when my family was shattered? Have you ever accepted an apology from a relative, but still couldn't forgive them right away? Leave a comment, because this story continues. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from the shattered pieces of betrayal? The Craftsman house in Portland was legally and physically mine, but the family I once knew had dissolved. Even if Frank, Loretta, and I re-establish contact someday, things will never be the same. They revealed their true nature, and I can't erase that truth. I began reorganizing my life. First was repairing my professional reputation. My boss, after reviewing the retraction letters from my aunt and uncle, was sympathetic. Family stuff is complicated sometimes. Take a break, but the company needs you back soon. The Seattle contract is still shaky. I dove into work, determined to prove my worth. Within weeks, the Seattle project stabilized, and I even secured a few small side contracts. This success was a gust of wind blowing away the clouds of doubt. The Portland community reaction was mixed. Some neighbors, Alice's close friends, supported me when they learned the truth. She would be so proud of you, Helen said, holding my hand. But a few, friends of my aunt and uncle, remained cold. I chose not to waste energy convincing them. The truth had been confirmed in court, and I had the people who believed me. I moved forward with the plan for Alice's Nook, the nonprofit community space Alice envisioned. I hired an architect specializing in historic home renovations, ensuring the unique features of the Craftsman house were preserved. Noelle came to help. bringing her vibrant energy. We cleaned the house, clearing away the old residue, painted the walls a soothing blue, and placed soft beanbag chairs around the room. I built a custom bookshelf, filling it with Grandma Alice's collection, from Mary Oliver poetry to Toni Morrison novels. String lights illuminated the room with a warm, golden glow. Noelle laughed loudly. You didn't just build a library, you built a home for every lost kid out there. I hung up a framed drawing of Grandma Alice smiling. Her eyes seemed to follow me, nodding in approval. With every hammer strike, every coat of paint, I felt her presence beside me, folding a crane, whispering encouragement. This process was a form of therapy, helping me fulfill my promise to her and affirm my own vision. Alice's Nook opened every Sunday, welcoming teens who felt abandoned, had lost a loved one, or were in therapy. They sat on the beanbags, read, sipped jasmine tea, and found comfort in the warm space. One young girl, her eyes glistening, said, "This place feels like home, but without the shouting." My heart swelled, knowing Grandma Alice would be smiling. Alice's Nook officially opened in the spring, featuring works by local artists on themes of family, memory, and change. The opening night was surprisingly crowded, including some neighbors who had previously been suspicious. Alice would have loved this place, an elderly woman said, pointing to the carefully curated space. Kyle even showed up, bringing an old photo of Grandma Alice standing on the porch, beaming. "Found it in their album," he said. "It belongs here." I hung the photo by the entrance, next to her portrait, like her personal welcome. Kyle and I slowly reconciled over weekly coffees. He was sincere. Unlike my aunt and uncle, "They can't handle this," he said, stirring his latte. "Uncle Frank is drinking more, and Aunt Loretta barely leaves the house. They feel humiliated." I took a sip of my coffee, responding, "I didn't humiliate them. Their own actions did." He nodded, his eyes sad. "I'm not defending them. I just want you to know." I appreciated his honesty, even if I couldn't forgive my aunt and uncle. The wound was still too deep. The first Thanksgiving was difficult. Previously, Aunt Loretta hosted a massive dinner. Uncle Frank carved the turkey, and the air was thick with unspoken criticism. This year, I hosted Friendsgiving at the house, inviting Noelle and the friends who stood by me. We lit the fireplace for the first time since the drama, banishing the old residue, and the dining table was filled with laughter. Noelle, doing the dishes, remarked, "It's different, but so much better. No stress, no having to watch out for Aunt Loretta's barbed comments." She was right. There was no longer the pressure of family obligation, only pure joy. This was the first Thanksgiving I hosted without my old family, paving the way for warmer events at Alice's Nook later on. That night, settled in Grandma Alice's armchair by the fireplace, I let the emotions wash over me, the scent of jasmine tea subtly reminding me of evenings spent with her. I had lost the family I once knew, but I had found the strength to stand firm in my truth. Pain and liberation intertwined, and I allowed myself a small smile. A year after the court ruling that returned the house, I stood inside Alice's Nook, now a vibrant exhibition space, hosting a photo series on intergenerational family dynamics. Noelle whispered, "Full circle moment." I looked around, feeling Grandma Alice walking beside me, satisfied with her legacy. For the first time since the locks were changed, this truly felt like home. Have you ever turned deep pain into something beautiful? The ending is here, but the legacy of Alice's Nook lives on. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you ever felt like a completely new person after a tumultuous year? Looking around the crowded Alice's Nook, I realized the Craftsman house had transformed from a battlefield into a sanctuary. I completed the renovations meticulously, keeping the original oak floors and stained glass windows, but adding soft blue walls and warm string lights. Alice's Nook opened 3 days a week, Sunday for teenagers, Saturday and Friday for art exhibits, enough to cover maintenance without bothering the neighbors. My career flourished. After the court victory, the company invited me back, not just for my competence, but for the resilience and backbone I showed. My boss said, "Your story inspires the community. We need people like you." I was promoted to creative director, leading my own team, free to pursue meaningful projects. A client in Seattle commented, "You work like nothing can stop you." They had no idea I had been trained during months of facing down my aunt and uncle. One afternoon, Kyle appeared at Alice's Nook, hugging a small bookshelf he had built himself. He was awkward. I knew they were wrong from the start, Aunt Frank and Aunt Loretta, but I was afraid of being shunned. I'm sorry, Emily. I looked at him, my feelings mixed. At least you said it, I replied. That takes courage. I hadn't forgiven him, but placing his bookshelf next to Grandma Alice's was a small step toward reconnection. My relationship with him was gradually built on sincerity rather than obligation. I hosted Friendsgiving at Alice's Nook, inviting Noelle, friends, and the young people who regularly visited. The long table was covered with linen, piled high with pumpkin pie and turkey. Laughter filled the air, and jasmine tea scented the room. A girl from the teen group said, "This place feels like a real family." A young man drew an origami crane on a napkin, giving it to me as thanks, warming my heart. The party marked a real shift. The family I once knew was broken, but I had built a new one. The cracks were still there, but this space was slowly healing them. As for Frank and Loretta, things remained a complicated wound. We had limited contact, short texts, one brief meeting at a neutral cafe on my birthday. The relationship was strictly formal, stripped of all illusion. I no longer waited for the unconditional love they proved they couldn't give. My therapist said, "They are not the family you deserve. Accepting that is the healing step." The truth was painful, but liberating. I found a new family elsewhere. Helen visited monthly, telling stories of Grandma Alice folding cranes for charity fairs. Noelle and close friends proved their loyalty was stronger than blood. A few artists at the Nook became close confidants, sharing jasmine tea and conversations about art. The deepest change was internal. The girl who collapsed when her aunt and uncle changed the locks was gone. I used to believe in unconditional love, that family puts each other's interests first. That naive girl disappeared, replaced by a stronger, clearer, and more peaceful Emily. I learned to distinguish real love from conditional acceptance, healthy compromise from self-erasure, and forgiveness from foolishness. During the opening night of the new exhibition, as people viewed the photos of family, some radiating joy, others revealing conflict, I saw a familiar figure near the door. Kyle was there, and beside him was Aunt Loretta. My heart pounded. She hadn't been back since the settlement. Kyle glanced at me, a silent, apologetic look. This wasn't planned. Aunt Loretta looked older, fragile, clutching her handbag. "Alice's Nook is beautiful," she said softly. "Grandma Alice would approve." No apology, no admission of guilt, but it was a small acknowledgement of my vision. "Thank you for coming," I replied, maintaining a polite distance. She nodded, her eyes lingering on the portrait of Grandma Alice, smiling. "How is Uncle Frank?" I asked, out of politeness. "High blood pressure," she replied, a hint of blame in her voice. "The doctor said he needs less stress." The same old line, as if blaming me. But I felt no guilt or need to defend myself. I nodded slightly, letting her words pass without taking on the burden. After they left, Kyle texted, "Sorry, that wasn't planned." Standing in Alice's Nook, the scent of jasmine tea lingering, I felt Grandma Alice smiling. I had turned pain into a place of healing. Have you ever found peace after letting go of what once defined you? Share your story below, because Emily's journey is still ongoing. Have you ever realized your true strength only after confronting the people who tried to pull you down? The surprise encounter with Aunt Loretta at Alice's Nook made me reflect on my journey. Kyle texted afterward. "She insisted on coming when she knew I was going to the Nook. You handled that so calmly." A year ago, her blaming me for Uncle Frank would have troubled me for weeks. Now, it was just a fleeting moment that didn't define or destroy the peace I had worked so hard to build. That evening, after the guests left, I locked the door of Alice's Nook and walked through the quiet rooms of the craftsman house. I stopped at Grandma Alice's study, the only room I kept almost untouched. On the desk, beneath a thin layer of dust, was a framed quote from Toni Morrison that she loved. "You are your own home." The scent of jasmine tea seemed to linger in the air, reminding me of evenings folding origami cranes with her. A year later, Alice's Nook became a famous healing space in Portland. No longer a place of dispute, but a home of hope. I organized a Memories and Books event where the teens at the Nook shared their stories. A 15-year-old boy from the foster care system stood up, his voice trembling. "This is the first time I've ever felt like I belong somewhere." His words echoed my own journey, bringing tears to my eyes. In the sunlit room, Kids read books on beanbag chairs, their laughter filling the air, and I saw Grandma Alice smiling. One day, Kyle came to the nook, holding an old photo he found in a family album. Grandma Alice and me, at age 6, sitting on the window seat, beaming. "I found it," he said. "It belongs to you." I touched the frame, my heart warming, as if reclaiming a lost memory. I hung it next to Grandma Alice's portrait, where the light shone through the stained glass, like a promise of healing. Uncle Frank and Aunt Loretta, in their attempt to steal the house, inadvertently forced me to find an inviolable sanctuary, myself. They changed the locks, slandered me, stole the wooden box and her diaries, but they couldn't take away the meaning Grandma Alice instilled in me. Through the months of fighting, I realized they once stole the key from my hand, but they were the ones who helped me find the true door where I belonged. Family is more than just blood. Noelle, Helen, the friends at the Nook, and even Kyle, who was making amends with sincerity every day, had become the family I chose. Standing in Grandma Alice's room, where the scent of jasmine tea still seemed to linger, I felt her comforting nod. They had taken many things, but they couldn't take away the meaning she planted in me, that a true home is built from love and courage, not bricks or a will. And I, Emily, am the keeper of that flame. They trampled the origami crane, the symbol of my soul, and lied to me for 20 years. But that very betrayal lit an inextinguishable flame of justice and forced them to beg for mercy. If you have ever felt injustice from your own family, or believe that spiritual legacies must be protected from greed, subscribe now. Together, we not only spread this story to thousands who are suffering in silence, but also build a community where truth always triumphs and every wound finds healing. The next story will show you the power of turning pain into decisive action and how I face the biggest challenge yet to come. And I need to know, in your opinion, when a legacy is trampled, is there still room for forgiveness? Or must justice be served at all costs?